You are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night's Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, we are still in the era of neurovasculature. My friends, today's meeting, I take you through the embryonic development of the venous system. My friends, last week we looked at the embryonic development of the arterial system. So my friends, if you've not had the opportunity to watch that video, kindly go into the playlist by way of the developmental anatomy, get the video and watch it. And my friends, today's meeting is an important aspect that you don't want to miss out, because one thing I've realized is that when it comes to some of these concepts, teachers fail to convey the right thing to students. And my friend, that is why it is my job as the noted anatomical prophet to take you through some of these concepts. And so without much ado, let's set the ball rolling looking at the embryonic development of the venous system. So we are talking about development of the venous system. My friends, this development of the venous system, just like we did for the arterial system, which I told you that we are talking about these veins formed from scratch. So we talked about not angiogenesis, but rather we said is vasculogenesis. So the same thing, vasculogenesis of the venous system. That's what we are going to do today. My friends, to make this concept so easy for you, this is the thing. Now, there are three pairs of primitive veins. Now, it's from these primitive veins that we get, the definitive veins that we find around. And what are these three pairs of primitive veins we are talking about? Now, one of them from the body wall. Now, this time from the body wall, the veins from the body wall, will come through something we call the common cardinal veins. Now, remember that I told you that these veins, they are paired. And so, for instance, when I talk about the common cardinal veins, we are talking about the right common cardinal vein. We are talking about the left common cardinal vein. Now, whenever we say something is common, then it tells me that it's either going to divide or going to receive some two main things or more. So, for instance, these common cardinal veins I'm talking about, if it's the right, then we are going to have one from the cranial region. Now, last time I told you that for the embryo, the cranial can also be called the anterior portion. And I told that the caudal or the inferior portion can also be called the posterior portion. That's why, for instance, we talked about the anterior neuropore to also be called cranial neuropore. If you remember, we talked about the caudal neuropore to also be called posterior neuropore. So for this reason, what I'm saying is that we have the right common cardinal vein over here. In the same thing, it will receive what we call from the cranial region an anterior cardinal vein. In that case, we call it right anterior cardinal vein, and from the caudal region, it receives right posterior, cardinal vein. The same way for the left common cardinal vein will receive left anterior cardinal vein, and of course, it will receive left posterior cardinal vein. That is what we are talking about. That's the first primitive vein. I'm going to the whiteboard. I'll explain these things to you. Number two, the next pair of veins that we need is, my friends, those veins which will be carrying oxygen-rich blood, from the mother. And my friends, what veins am I talking about? My friends, I'm talking about the left and right umbilical veins. Left and right umbilical veins. Yes, that's what we are talking about. And then the medial most coming from the yolk sac. Now, one thing we know about the yolk sac is that the yolk sac eventually forms what we call the gut tube. The foregut, the midgut, the hindgut, the gastrointestinal tract. That's what I'm talking about. And remember that it is these kind of food products which will run in there. You have to eventually be absorbed. Get to the portals. We are going to explain these things for you. So what I'm trying to say is that from the yolk sac, the veins will be coming this time around through what we call vitelline veins. Vitelline veins. So these are the three pairs of veins that we are going to talk about. Once you understand these things, the development of the venous system becomes so easy for you. And so let's look at what I'm trying to say. Now, whenever you talk about the development of the veins, then let's also get back to the development of the heart tube. Remember that I've told you times without number that in the cardiogenic area, okay, of the embryo, we have what we call the the cardiogenic cores developing, two cardiogenic cores, and then eventually cavities will develop in there to become what we call endocardial tubes, two endocardial tubes, and then they will fuse to form the single heart tube. That's what we are aware of. Now, this single heart tube, one thing that we know is that from caudal to cranial, we said we are going to have the sinus venosus, okay? We are going to have, of course, the primitive atrium, primitive ventricle, and of course, we have the bulbous cortex. We've explained these things for you. Now, I am interested in the caudal portion of this heart tube because that's the venous end of that heart tube. That's the one we know of, and that's the guy we call it the sinus venosus. So just let's sketch out those so that we explain the concept over here. So we're talking about sinus venosus. So I'm interested in the caudal portion of the heart tube, okay? And this caudal portion of the heart tube is nothing but, of course, the sinus venosus. And one thing that everyone is aware, because I've explained it, is that this sinus venosus that we have, okay, gets us two horns. So there are two horns of the sinus venosus. Now, my friends, this guy over here is what we call the right horn of sinus venosus. Okay, the one I have over here is the right horn of the sinus venosus. And so the opposite one over here becomes, the left horn. So I'm talking about the left horn of sinus venosus. So, because we are talking about the development of the venous system, that's why we're bringing in these guys. Now, here's the point. Over here, what we see is that, okay, there's the body of the sinus venosus, the right horn, and of course the left horn. Now, one thing that we see, okay, moving from the lateral aspect, okay, over here to these sides, will be the veins that I mentioned, the first veins, okay, that I mentioned, by way of the common cardinal veins. I told you that you'll be bringing all the veins from the body wall. So I'm interested in this one towards the left. So we call it left common cardinal vein. Left common cardinal vein. So it means the opposite one over here becomes our right. So this is our right common cardinal. Okay, so that's what we see. Now, also to think about it. Now, last time I told you that even prior to folding, prior to craniocaudal folding, what we see is that even the mouth, the opening of the mouth, by way of the bucopharyngeal membrane, the future opening of the mouth, will be cranial to the cardiogenic area. That's what we said. And even cranial to that, we said we are going to have that portion, which we call it the undifferentiated lateral plate mesoderm. Okay, and that is the septum transversum. So the septum transversum during craniocaudal fold, it will fold below and then come below the developing heart tube. And I've told you the four main derivatives of the septum transversum. Yes, I mentioned these ones to you. I mentioned that of the fibrous pericardium. I told you about the central tendon of the diaphragm. I told you about the, ventral mesogastrum, which will give some part of the lesser menstruum. We are going to explain all these things as we move along. But importantly, as far as this meeting is concerned, I told you that this septum transversum also gives rise to something that we call the stroma of the liver. And whenever you talk about stroma, we are not talking about anything strange. We are talking about the connective tissue support of the liver. That's all. And so, for instance, over here, what I'm going to do is that there's the heart tube, and so below it, the liver will be below, of course, the heart. So I'm going to draw the liver over here to explain my concept. Okay. So, for instance, this is my liver. Let me see. Assuming there's the liver. Okay. Let me just using it to explain this concept for you. There's the liver. Good. Now, from the liver, okay, when I come to, now I mentioned three sets of primitive veins. You've seen one set. That's the left and right common cardinal veins. Now, how about the other two pairs of primitive veins? The other one which goes lateral, okay, is this guy which runs all the way. It comes over here. There's another one which comes all the way. It's laterally placed. That's why it's coming more lateral. Okay, let me even make it. Let me get more space over here to explain this concept clearer. Okay, good. So let me say this. Let me say this, my liver. Okay, so what I have over here, these guys which are lateral, I told you from the mother, so from outside, so you go laterally. And so, my friends, this guy I have over here is nothing but this is the right umbilical vein. Right umbilical vein. And then of course it means that the other one over here becomes our left umbilical vein. Left umbilical vein. Now the other set of vein that we have, okay, now this time right, goes medial. And so this guy over here, which I'm bringing it over here, going medially. Okay, this is the one we call vitelline veins. Now the vitelline veins will bring in the blood, okay, from of course the yolk sac. That's what we said. And so these guys, this one over here will be called right vitelline vein. Okay, there's the one over here, and then of course the other one over here becomes our left vitelline vein. Okay, so these are the three sets of primitive veins that we have. Okay, and I want you to become aware of that. Now, there are so many modifications that we find over here. The first thing. Now, what we will see is that out of the right and left horns of the sinus venosus, one thing I want you to become aware is that the left one leaves. Yes, so the left one leaves. So I'm going to use red to cancel it out, that it leaves totally. So the left horn of sinus venosus leaves, and my friends, the remnant of it forms something we call sinus. So it forms what we call coronary sinus. So in your exam, when we ask you that coronary sinus as a vein originates from where? It originates as remnant of this left horn of sinus venosus. Now, my friends, in the case of that of the right, it remains. So right remains. That's what I want you to know regarding the sinus venosus, the left and right horns. Now, having looked at that, then the other thing is that out of the left and right umbilical veins. Now, for instance, there's a popular question which comes in your exam, and we ask you that ligamentum teres hepatis, okay, as a gross structure associated with the liver, one of the ligaments associated with the liver, we ask you the embryonic origin, and usually the answer that is given is umbilical vein. My friends, remember that we have two umbilical veins. So which one are we talking about? The important thing I want you to know is that degeneration even long ago, and for that matter, it doesn't contribute to any ligament that we find in the adult's liver, associated with the liver, is this guy over here. It's the right umbilical vein. It degenerates completely. The right umbilical vein degenerates completely. It doesn't give any remnant, okay, postnatally. So this is what we call the right umbilical vein. It degenerates completely. Yes. Now, my friends, how about that of the left umbilical vein? Now, my friends, the left umbilical vein, some portion of it also degenerates. Now, the reason is that I told you that the left horn of sinus venosus degenerates. And so the cranial portion, I want you to become aware of this, that the cranial portion of this left umbilical vein also degenerates. Yes, that's what happens. I've told you something, that bad company corrupts good manners. Now, because this portion has degenerated, okay, sinus venosus, by way of course, the left horn of sinus venosus, even that portion, the cranial portion of what we call the left umbilical vein, also degenerates together with the cranial portion of the left vitelline vein. I want you to appreciate these concepts. Yes, that's what happens. So, for instance, if I ask you, ligamentum teres hepatis is a remnant of what? Or embryologically derived from what? Your answer is the caudal portion of left umbilical vein. Yes, that's what I want you to know. So now, my friends, what are we going on? Let's see what happens. Right now, the only connection which is connecting the liver to, of course, the venous end of the heart is, of course, this right vitelline vein. That's the only one. Because the cranial portion of the left is generated with that of the left umbilical vein also. So that's what we see. And so the point is, there should be a way where this blood, oxygen-rich blood, coming through this, this left umbilical vein from the mother's blood, okay, will get to the heart of the fetus or of the embryo. And so for this reason, there should be a connection. There should be a connection. And what is going to be that connection? It has to come all the way from this left umbilical vein. Okay, so what is going to happen? From the left umbilical vein, there's going to be a connection. So let me make it this way. So from the left umbilical vein, we see that the blood is going to be shunted from it, and it has to go and join the heart. Okay, and this one, it's an anastomotic connection. I've told you that whenever blood vessels, whenever nerves, okay, whenever these ducts, okay, they join, that's something we call anastomosis. And so this is an anastomosis where it's taking place. And my friends, this anastomosis is something which is also a blood vessel that we have to make mention of. It is the ductus. We are talking about venous veins, so ductus venosus. Ductus venosus. Something we know that postnatally it will become ligamentum venosum. Something we know about that. So there's the ductus venosus. Now, so then the question is, what is connecting the liver to, of course, the heart tube? It is just this portion over here, the cranial portion of this right vitelline vein over here. And so this cranial portion, let me highlight it with red, okay, to show you this area. From here to here is a channel which is going to connect this liver to, of course, the heart tube. And my friends, because it's connecting the liver to the heart tube, we will call this hepatocardiac channel. Hepato for the liver, cardiac for the heart. Hepatocardiac channel. But because this one belongs to the right side, then we want to qualify it with the word, the prefix, right. So we say right hepatocardiac channel. Right hepatocardiac channel. Now think about it from the gross anatomy viewpoint. When you went to the gross lab, for instance, you saw something. That something which connects. There's a blood vessel which has some portion in the liver and some portion going to the right atrium of the heart. Who is that guy? I'm sure you tell me that we are talking about the inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. And that is why this cranial portion of the right ventral vein, by way of the right hepatocardiac channel, will contribute to the terminal portion of the inferior vena cava. So I want you to appreciate this guy here also. Good. Now, having seen this, then I have to quickly, deal with the ventral veins. Okay, because we've seen the cranial portion of this, right ventral vein giving rise to what we call the right hepatocardiac channel, which will contribute to, of course, the terminal portion of the inferior vena cava. If you have seen that, then let's deal with it. What is the fate of these ventral veins that we have in the human body? The fate. What will become of them? So let's look at the feet. Let's just quickly, put them around over here, so I can appreciate the fate of these vector-line veins. Just putting them over here. So the fate of the vector-line veins. Now think about it. I told you that the vector-line veins will be bringing blood from the yolk sac. We know that the yolk sac forms the gut tube. And remember, the absorbed products of digestion, from the gut tube, will have to go where before it gets to, of course, the right atrium of the heart, eventually, to be distributed to the systemic circulation. Where? It has to go to the liver. And that is why the veins which will be draining the gut tube, eventually, they will be going into something called the portal vein. So we talk about the first, derivative that you need to, be aware of regarding the fate or the derivative of the vector-line veins is number one, the hepatic portal veins. Hepatic portal vein. Now, one thing that we know about hepatic portal vein is that it got to divide into two. Now, usually veins will have tributaries. Portal vein will have its formative tributaries by way of course, something we call the superior mesenteric vein, and of course the splenic vein, no problem. I'm talking about after we form this portal vein, usually arteries will divide. Now, this portal vein also divides. Yes, it will divide because at the end of the day, we have left and right main lobes of the liver. So it has to divide into what we call the right and left lobes. Okay, so it will divide into what we call even the right and left branches of it. Okay, branches of this vein. You should become aware of that. Now, apart from that, the portal vein, the right and left will divide further. Eventually, we get what? We get the sinusoids of the liver. Sinusoids, okay? That is continuous capillaries in the liver. Yes. Not only that, what happens? These sinusoids, yes, eventually will get mixed with blood, auxiliary blood from, hepatic artery proper. But the point is that from the sinusoids, where will the blood drain into eventually? You know about the classic lobule of the liver, with the centrally, we have the central vein. So it means that from the sinusoids, we go to what we call the central veins. So even the central veins will be arising from these guys, central veins. No, we are not done. We are not done, no. Now, from the central veins, okay, they will collect, eventually giving us what? Drain into what? Into hepatic veins. This time, hepatic veins. So, we talk about hepatic veins. Now, we have 3 hepatic veins. And one thing we know is that we have that of the right, we have the middle, and we have that of the left hepatic veins. Okay, that will also be there. Now, eventually, these 3 hepatic veins, where are they draining into? Okay, from the gross anatomy viewpoint, where are they draining into? They are draining into, of course, the terminal portion of what we call the inferior vena cava. And my friends, that is why over here we saw it even at the cranial portion of the right ventral vein. We saw by way of the right hepatocardiac channel, we had what we call the development, eventually going to develop into the terminal portion of the inferior vena cava. So my friends, even the 5th point is going to be the inferior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and precisely we are talking about a terminal portion, terminal. Yes. So my friends, these are important veins that I want you to become aware of. Okay, and that's the one thing that I want you to know. Now, if you have seen that of the umbilical veins, what happens to them? What happens to that of the vector-line veins? Then, my friends, you know what is left? We have to talk about the common cardinal veins. Common cardinal veins. And that's the next thing we are going to look at over here, and then to understand these concepts for you. Now, the common cardinal veins, I told you that they are common for the reason that we will be having, let me just, indicate it for you. So assuming I have this, let me even make it this way. Okay, now these are the common cardinal veins. So there's towards the right side and there's the left. And so for this reason, this guy over here, the one I told you they will be coming in this manner. So there's actually the right common cardinal vein. Okay, right common cardinal vein. And then this one becomes our left common cardinal vein. Now what it means is that this one over here from the cranial region becomes our what? Becomes our right anterior. This one is anterior cardinal vein. Okay, and then from the caudal region becomes our what? Our right. This time we're talking about posterior cardinal vein. And so the same thing applies to that over here, that we have what we call the left, anterior cardinal vein, and then we have that on the left posterior cardinal vein. Okay, that is what we see over here. Now, let's first form what we call superior vena cava. So if you think about superior vena cava, remember that superior vena cava will be coming from the, from the gross anatomy viewpoint. Superior vena cava is superior, going into the right atrium of the heart, draining blood in there. Okay, so it means that whenever you think about superior vena cava, the formative tributaries eventually they should be coming towards the right side. That's the first point. And so that's what I want you to understand over here. That this is what is going to happen. Now look at how it is. So it means we are moving from the left and meeting that on the right, because superior vena cava is formed at the right side, not the left side, the right side. So for this reason, what happens is that if I ask you what are the formative tributaries of superior vena cava, one thing that everyone is aware is that we have the left and right brachiocephalic veins. Now, how about the right one? It's just over here, and so it goes here straight. So if I talk about the right brachiocephalic, right brachiocephalic vein, let's put that point over here. Right brachiocephalic vein. Right brachiocephalic vein. What will be the component which will be forming it? It's just this one. And who is this guy? Can we talk about it? Who is this guy? From the right side. Okay, so we're talking about the right anterior cardinal vein. So the right anterior cardinal vein is the one which forms. Okay, usually the vertical one. That's what we talked about. It's shorter. Okay, that's the right brachiocephalic vein. So my friends, your answer is right. We are talking about right anterior cardinal vein. But my friends, you gotta be mindful. But that this time around, we are talking about the cranial portion. Okay, the cranial portion over here. So that is what you have to become aware of. So when you put this one over here, put in bracket cranial portion, cranial parts. Okay, so that is what we see over here. Then the next one that we are going to look at, okay, will be that of the left brachiocephalic vein. Left brachiocephalic vein. So that one, where is it going to come from? Embryonic origin. So the left, now it came from here. Now look at it. It came from here. Okay, so this portion is the cranial portion of left anterior cardinal vein. So I'm talking about left anterior cardinal vein. But we gotta be mindful that we are talking about the cranial part. Okay, and because it's going to be the cranial part and it's going this way. Okay, so the blood will be shunted this way, going this way. This connection, okay, from this left side, okay, to the right side, anterior cardinal veins, is something we call oblique anastomosis. Okay, it's something that we call oblique, running in an oblique manner, anastomosis. So it's an oblique anastomosis between the left and right anterior carnal veins. Okay, so you talk about oblique anastomosis. Oblique anastomosis. Okay, so that's what we see. Now, how about now, because of this oblique anastomosis and blood is not coming over here, then what happens is that the caudal portion of the left anterior carnal vein degenerates. Yes, so it degenerates. And so we have this left brachiocephalic vein, right brachiocephalic vein. So it means this area becomes our, so let me highlight it with the red over here. This area becomes, okay, this area becomes superior vena cava. So by friends, superior vena cava, what will be formed at superior vena cava? What will be forming this superior vena cava? So what is over here? What is over here? The first thing that everyone is aware over here will be the right common carnal vein. So the first one, right common carnal vein. Common carnal vein. Then apart from that, what else? You see that we are talking about, so we are in the right anterior carnal vein, but we are talking about the caudal portion. So right anterior carnal vein. But we got to be mindful that we are talking about the caudal part. Yes, that's what we see. We are through with that. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about will be that of inferior vena cava. I'll bring in the major tributaries, talk about Ezekiel's vein, and then we end it. Okay, so once you understood this, now if you think about inferior vena cava, they are more towards the caudal region. So it tells me that they will be taken care of by what we call the posterior carnal veins. The left and right posterior carnal veins are going to take care of those ones. And so let's quickly, yes, run through those ones and of course bring our class to a close. Great. So now, to do this, a lot of the blood vessels or a lot of these posterior, these branches or these tributaries actually will be taken away. They will degenerate. So for this reason, the posterior carnal veins you are going to draw, I want you to use dotted lines, and those ones which will persist, we indicate them with continuous, lines. So let's look at it. The first one, what have we seen? So now let's make it this way. Now what I'm interested in over here is to show some bit of it. Okay, so the anterior, right anterior was over here. So let me say this is the right side. And then let's say this is the left side. Okay, so this is what we have. I mean, we are not going to use them, but I'm just trying to show you where they are. Okay, so I am interested more over here in the posterior carnal veins. Okay, in this region. This is where I'm interested in. Now, talking about the posterior carnal veins. Okay, the point over here is that the kidney in the posterior abdominal wall will also develop. And by way of the developmental anatomy regarding the urinary system, I mentioned how the kidney will form. The vein, okay, which will be draining the kidney, is something, okay, in primitive life we call it mesonephric vein. Mesonephric. So I want you to also bring in that point over here that the kidney, and I'll be explaining it as we move along. Let me make it this way. Okay, so the kidney let's say I have, that's my right kidney, and then we have that of the left kidney. Okay, so that's my right kidney, that's my left kidney. These dotted lines over here, they are the veins which will be in the primitive life. And my friends, these veins, okay, those ones you find over here, let me use M to call these veins M to call it. Now the M over there represents something called mesonephric. They are the mesonephric veins, okay, the kidneys, draining the kidney. By draining the kidney, okay, actually into something we call subcarnal veins. Okay, so over here, this guy that you find over here, which I'm using the other lines to show, okay, let me call it S. Those are S. The S over there is nothing but the subcarnal veins. Okay, the same thing over here to this side also. So now my point is that through the mesonephric vein, okay, venous blood in the kidneys, okay, will be draining into what we call the posterior cardinal veins, respective ones, via something, and the group of veins that I've introduced. Draining into that area will be these guys. They are below the posterior cardinal veins, so we call them subcardinal veins, below. Now, my friends, something else also happens. You know, there's this kind of connection, okay? Now, the left and right subcardinal veins, there's only subcardinal vein. The left and right subcardinal veins, they also communicate. And my friend, that communication, okay, between them is something we also call, let me call it I. And I over there is nothing but is something that we call it intersubcardinal. Inter is in between the subcardinal veins, so intersubcardinal anastomosis. Intersubcardinal anastomosis. Okay, that's also there. Now, there's another set of veins which also develop. This time around above the subcardinal veins. So for this reason, we call them supracardinal veins. So where the kidneys are behind them, let's put them over there, but they are above. So we call them supracardinal veins. These guys, they are the supracardinal veins. Okay, so let me call it SUP. These guys are the SUPs. SUP, and then also SUP. So the SUP that I've indicated over there is nothing but the supracardinal veins. Supracardinal veins. Yes. Now, we first want to form our inferior vena cava, the first one. Now, also don't forget that this inferior vena cava is towards the right, just like the superior vena cava draining to the right inflow of the heart. It's towards the right. So for this reason, one other thing too that I told you was that the terminal portion of the superior vena cava, okay, formed by the cranial portion of the right ventral vein, something we call hepatocardiac channel. You remember that guy? Okay, I'm going to put this over here towards the right side. So let me just put it somewhere here. Okay, somewhere here. This guy is a hepatocardiac channel. Okay, this is a hepatocardiac channel. Actually, the right one, hepatocardiac. Hepatocardiac channel. Great. Now let's look at it. So the right hepatocardiac channel that we have over here will be contributing to this inferior vena cava. So let's look at the sources of inferior vena cava. There are actually 6 sources, embryonic sources of the superior vena cava. So let's look at it. Inferior vena cava. Now, let's look at it. There's going to be an anastomotic connection between, because it's formed towards the right side, between, of course, this right, supracardinal vein and, of course, the right subcardinal vein. So like this, there's going to be an anastomosis. Okay, so let me call this one anas 1. So this anas 1 over there is the anastomosis between the right supra and subcardinal veins. Supra and subcardinal veins. Okay, that is what we see. And then there's also going to be an anastomosis between this right subcardinal vein and hepatocardinal channel. So let me call this one anas 2. Okay, so for the anas 2, it is the anastomosis between, of course, the right subcardinal vein and then, of course, the right hepatocardiac channel. Great. So that's what we have. So now let's look at the developmental origin of what we call the inferior vena cava. I told you that there are 6 sources of the superior vena cava. So as I run through them, and you will tell me the sources. So let's go in this manner. Yeah, the first one is what? The caudal portion of right posterior cardiac vein. Caudal portion. So I'm not writing for you, so just be writing as we talk about it. Right posterior, the caudal portion of right posterior cardiac vein. Then what is this? What of this one? What's this guy? Who is this guy? We are talking about what? The supracardinal vein, the right supracardinal vein. What else? We're talking about the anastomosis, the anas 1. The anastomosis between the right supracardinal vein, of course, the subcardinal vein. And then what else? Then we're talking about who? The right subcardinal vein. Yes, we are moving on right subcardinal vein. And then what else? The anastomosis, anas 2. The anastomosis between the right subcardinal vein and then, of course, the cardiac channel. And then finally, what? The hepatocardiac channel. These are the 6 sources. So if this is 1, this is 2, this goes to 3, this goes to 4, 5, and then, of course, 6 sources of the inferior vena cava. It's as simple as that. Now the other one is that if you've seen, inferior vena cava, one of the major tributaries of this, inferior vena cava is the left and right renal veins. Left and right renal veins. So the kidney will be drained by renal veins postnatally. So what are you talking about? So the renal veins, okay, this is one of them. We said there's M, mesonephric vein. So if I talk about the right renal vein, it's by who? It's by, of course, the right mesonephric vein. That's the embryonic origin, and that's all. Now, if I talk about that on the left, it has to come all the way, travel all the way, and drain into the inferior vena cava from here to here. And so, in the case of the left renal vein, what are the embryonic origins? The left mesonephric vein, no problem. Then, how about this? It is traversing this region. And what is over here in this region? What is over here? We are talking about the left subcarnal vein. Okay, the intermediate region, the small portion. And then finally, we're talking about the intercardinal. Okay, inter-subcardinal anastomosis. Inter-subcardinal anastomosis. That's what we find over there. Okay, so that's all. Now let's go to the next one. Also, we will have some tributaries to it. By way of, for instance, the gonadal veins, okay, from the caudal region, from the cranial region, suprarenal veins. So let's look at it. From the cranial region, so as in from here to here. Let me use my arrow to show. From here all the way to here. Okay, also from here all the way to here. Okay, let me say here. So these are what we call the suprarenal veins. Now, from the gross anatomy viewpoint, the right suprarenal vein drains, because it's very close to the inferior vena cava, is towards the right. It's very close, it drains directly into it. But in the case of that of the left, because it's a bit distant, further away from that of the inferior vena cava, is towards the right, because this time the left suprarenal vein or the left adrenal vein is towards the left. What is going to happen is that it has to drain into the longer renal vein, left renal vein. And so that's why it comes all the way over here. So if I ask you, what is the embryonic origin, okay, of the suprarenal veins? Your answer is so simple. For that of the right, we are talking about the right, okay, subcardinal vein, okay, the cranial portion, and then also the cranial portion for the left subcardinal vein will drain, actually this time around, not into inferior vena cava as in the case of the right, but for the left it will drain into the longer left renal vein. Now, how about the gonadal veins from the caudal region? Gonadal veins. So in the case of the gonadal veins, they will be taken care of by the caudal portions of the subcardinal veins. So this time around from here, okay. Now you can see that in the case of the right gonadal vein, okay, is from the caudal portion of the right, subcardinal vein, no problem. But the point over here is that it drains directly into the, inferior vena cava. Why? Because it's towards the right side. But in the case of the left, you see that it will rather be going to drain into the same origin, the caudal portion of the left subcardinal vein. But this time around, it is draining into the longer left renal vein. Yes, that's what we see. Now, there's that kind of connection between, of course, the superior vena cava and, of course, the inferior vena cava. Something we call the azygos vein. Now, in the case of the azygos vein, okay, one thing that we find is that this azygos vein, okay, actually runs in this manner. Okay, it runs in this manner. Okay, that's the azygos vein. So usually if you talk about the azygos vein, we are talking about what we call usually we're talking about the cranial portion, this time the cranial portion of what we call the right posterior cardinal vein, and then of course, some portion of what we call the right, talking about the supracardinal vein. Okay, that's the azygos vein. Now, there is one more thing which I want to touch on briefly before I end this class, and this is something which I have to just go back slightly and explain that concept to you in just a few minutes, and then bring it to a close. And my friend, that is something that we talk about. That is double superior vena cava. We are going back slightly. Double superior vena cava, I should have explained it. So let's look at the double superior vena cava. Now I told you, let me just do it briefly. Okay, these were the things I talked about. And I said these things. I said there was going to be an oblique anastomosis. Okay, and then I told you importantly that this portion, okay. Now, let me just take time. This is the right side, this is the left side. Superior vena cava will be formed towards the right side, okay? So this is, of course, the brachiocephalic vein, right brachiocephalic vein, and then this whole thing becomes our left brachiocephalic vein, okay, through this oblique anastomosis. And then we said that this whole thing is giving us the superior vena cava. I'm not going back, just go there and watch it. Now what I'm trying to say is that I told you that blood is shunted from the left side, okay, through this oblique anastomosis to that of the right anterior cardinal vein. Then what is going to happen is that this vessel over here, below over here, will degenerate. Yes, that's what happens. Now, my friends, one thing that I want you to understand over here is that sometimes it doesn't degenerate, so that we have something we call double superior vena cava. So what I want you to put down over there is that persistence of the caudal portion of the left anterior cardinal vein, okay, or non-formation of the oblique anastomosis between, of course, this left and right anterior cardinal veins will lead to something called double superior vena cava. So in such a case, you don't have only the right superior vena cava, you also have what we call left superior vena cava. That's what I want you to know. And then when that happens, in the case we have that of the left one also, remember that I told you that the sinus venosus, okay, in the beginning, I told that sinus venosus, the left one leaves. Okay, that's what we said, that the left one leaves and its remnant forms what we call the coronary sinus. If you are having left superior vena cava also, then what happens is that it's going to drain into what we call the sinus, coronary sinus. Okay, that is one thing I want you to become aware of. My friends, I'm very grateful for your time this evening. I believe you've understood this kind of concept. Okay, please share with friends if you enjoyed it. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.